Today I'm going to talk to you about the Battle of the Merville Battery, which is an airborne operation that took place in the opening hours of D-Day. And for me, it's a story that just doesn't get told enough. It's a proper against the odds war story, where the odds then got even worse. Now, to give you the background, at the very outset of D-Day, a huge series of airborne operations were to take place, which were to capture key bridges and defences to the east and west of Normandy, which would hamper the Reich's ability to A, defend the beaches, and B, get reinforcements to their vulnerable areas. And it is one of these sites that we're going to be talking about today. Over on the eastern side of Sword Beach, near the village of Merville, there stood a coastal artillery battery featuring what was thought to be 4 150mm coastal defence guns, each with a range of over 5 miles. So looking at this map, we can see the problem Merville is going to cause. Anything attempting to land in the eastern half of Sword Beach is going to get blown clean out of the water. And if we can't land on Sword Beach, then we can't take Caen. And if we can't take Caen, then the Germans can reinforce the whole of the Normandy coastline and D-Day is over. And the most important thing is that D-Day doesn't fail. Someone needs to disable that battery. And that job fell to the 9th Battalion of the Parachute Regiment under the command of 29-year-old Lieutenant Colonel Terence Otway. The plan, while complex and layered, involved simultaneous attacks from the perimeters, a diversionary attack, as well as 3 glider landings placing 150 soldiers directly onto the battery itself. In summary, the plan was to overpower the site with overwhelming force and overwhelming numbers in the shortest possible time. 650 paratroopers in total would go in, outnumbering the Germans on the site 3-1. In order to prepare for their mission, the battalion took over Walbury Hill in Berkshire in April of 1944, as the geography of the ground here closely resembles that of the battery. And then, with a mock battery having been built to the same layout, they rehearsed and rehearsed until every part of the plan could be done by instinct and reaction alone. The plan was set, the men were ready. On the night before all the troops were locked down, Otway sent his officers into the Bear pub in Hungerford to kick back and relax before the main event, which was appreciated by all. However, unbeknownst to the officers, Otway had a test in mind. He had sourced the services of about 30 of the prettiest local WAF girls he could find in the area, whom he paid to flirt with his officers and try and get information out of them. And you know, not a single man spoke. Sadly, I can't tell you how far the ladies may have gone in that quest. Otway never said, and we never asked. But no man spoke. So at 11:20 on the night of the 5th of June, the battalion took off from RAF Tarrant Rushton in Dorset. The operation was a go. We were invading France. The red light went on, everybody stood up and checked their equipment. The green light went on, and they jumped. But no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. And from this moment on, everything started to go wrong. So the trouble with nighttime parachute drops is that they're notoriously difficult to actually get right in the first place. It is hard to make sure that you're jumping in the right place at night, and then combine that with the fact that there's an awful lot of anti-aircraft fire, flak, smoke and chaos. It's no wonder that paratroopers are scattered all over Normandy. Not just the 9th, mind, this happens to pretty much every paratrooper unit on D-Day, whether British or American. It was just an occupational hazard. I want you to consider for a moment just how easy that scattering can happen, even if you're jumping in the right place. To avoid tangling into each other, your soldiers are going to jump at about 5-second intervals. The aircraft is travelling at 150 miles per hour, so if we do a little bit of maths, we can work out that with each jump, the aircraft travels 134 metres between jumps. There are 22 paratroopers in your plane, so the distance between the first jump and the last jump is 2,949 metres. This means, even if things go like clockwork, your squad is spread neatly over nearly a 3-kilometre area. And did we mention there's a war on? Accounts vary, but out of the 500 men that jumped at 1 a.m, by 2:50 a.m, only 80 men had found their way to the rendezvous point, and a further 30 arrived by about 3 o'clock in the morning. Otway didn't have the luxury of waiting around. This assault had to be completed, and his men all clear by 0500, or HMS Arethusa was going to open up and bombard the battery from offshore. And you didn't want to be in the area when that happened. So the clock was ticking, and with a much reduced force, they set off for the battery. Colonel Otway and Major Parry took stock of what they had. They had no mine clearing equipment, they had no heavy weaponry, they had no explosives for demolishing the casemate bunkers. And take a look at one of the bunkers. These are solid concrete, they're not going anywhere. If you take a look at the aerial photograph after the initial bombardment, you can see that they survived that. And you can visit the site and see that they're still there today. Basically, all these guys going up against them have is rifles, Sten guns, Bangalore torpedoes and grenades. They did have 3 gliders inbound that were going to come in and land right on top of the battery. But as they got into position, they saw the first glider come in, which missed the site and crashed into the fields way too far to the rear to be of any use in the battle. The other 2 gliders, nowhere to be seen. They were on their own. The Germans were alerted. The job was as good as over. They had gone from outnumbering the Germans 3-1 to being outnumbered by the Germans 2-1. And those Germans were behind 100 metres of minefield in 4 concrete bunkers with 15 MG42 machine guns. And despite all this, 9 Para went for it. Corporal Len Dawson crept forward and placed 10 lengths of Bangalore torpedo, an explosive designed for clearing fences and light obstacles, into the barbed wire fence, and they blew a hole in that wire. Otway shouted, "Get in, get in, get in!" and they charged. They ran across 100 metres of open minefield, trusting to dumb luck that they could get to the other side without being blown up or shot and up to the casemates. The battle at the Merville Gun Battery lasted a whole 20 minutes, and at the end of that 20 minutes there were approximately 70 men of 9 Para left standing. All 4 casemates had been taken, even though only 4 men managed to get to casemate 4, they still cleared it. With no radio equipment, Otway fired a single flare into the night and a passing plane radioed this back. HMS Arethusa stood down from the proposed bombardment, just 10 minutes before she was due to open fire. Now, while the guns turned out not to be the 150mm terrors that intelligence had thought, they were still pretty impressive 100mm guns. They could still have sunk pretty much everything coming into Sword Beach. They were put out of action by smashing of the sights, so if they did work, they weren't going to be accurate, and the use of small plastic explosive and thermite charges in order to disable what they could. The assault on the Merville Battery was a success, and the fact that it was done by such a small and such a woefully ill-equipped force is still considered to be one of the most outstanding achievements of the Parachute Regiment to date. But that cost was high. At the end of the battle, out of the 650 men that went in on the operation, only 70 were left standing at the end, and almost 90% loss rate. According to Otway, 192 of them were never even seen again after leaving the aircraft. They were never even found. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Battle of the Merville Battery, one of the most overlooked actions of the Second World War, and yet one of the most important on D-Day. If you want to read more on this, I'm going to recommend you 2 books that I just can't put down. First is The Day the Devils Dropped In by Neil Barber, which is first-hand accounts of the people that were there. And the second, The Manner of Men by Stuart Tootle, a paratrooper himself. We'll put a link to each of these in the comments below. But thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed these. If you haven't already, do please subscribe to us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.